The movie opens up with our protagonist, David Ames, who wakes up in the morning in his luxurious apartment. He's quite obsessed with his appearance, as many wealthy and attractive people tend to be. David is the son of a successful writer and business person, and takes pride in his wealth and status. He smiles a lot and laughs like a maniac, giving us an early glimpse into what Scientology is doing to his brain. The same day, something very unusual happens. As David steps out of his apartment in the heart of New York City, he quickly realizes that something is amiss. The bustling city streets are eerily empty, devoid of people or any sign of life. Even the usually busy roads are completely silent, without any sign of moving vehicles. This strange and unsettling situation immediately makes David feel uneasy. So, he gets out of his fancy car and does what Tom Cruise always does. He starts running. He runs through the usually crowded and lively Times Square. He's so perplexed by the absence of any sign of life that he begins to shout out loud, hoping to find someone or something that can explain this bizarre occurrence. Suddenly, David wakes up in his bed again. In the background, he seems to be talking to a psychologist, but his words are hard to make out. He mentions he used to be a confident businessman before something happened. Surprisingly, as he gets out of bed, a beautiful woman can be seen beside him. This reveals that they are having a casual relationship. Though the girl requests David stay with her, he says he'll call her later, gives her a trademark, unhinged smile, and leaves the house. Next, when David drives through the city again, everything is back to normal, with people all around. He picks up his friend Brian, and they talk about his love life. We find out that the woman from David's bed is Julie Gianni, and even though they're physically involved, they're not in a romantic relationship. Brian also mentions that Julie is the girl of his dreams, and advises David to treat her with respect. David says he won't, then almost gets them hit by a Mack truck, and then they both laugh because they're bros. When David gets to his office, his secretary fills him in on important stuff and tells him that he's running late for a board meeting. David then heads to the meeting room and humorously compares the board members to the 7 dwarves because they all have unique personalities, and because Tom Cruise is short and he's projecting. In a flashback, we see David's childhood, where adults are jealous of his future inheritance. His parents tragically died in a car crash caused by drunk driving, leaving him their fortune. However, his father never truly accepted David's fear of heights. The story then shifts to a place that looks like a prison, where David is talking to a man who's probably his psychologist, McCabe. David doesn't seem happy and denies any involvement in murder charges. It's revealed that after his parents died, he became very wealthy, but he also had some unresolved problems. Reluctantly, David agrees to talk about his situation with the psychologist. In another flashback, we go to a birthday party at David's house. His friend Brian introduces him to a beautiful woman named Sophia. During the party, David gets a warning from his father's friend, Tip Nice, about some board members trying to take his company from him. Ignoring this, David spends time with Sophia, showing her his fancy living space, which includes another luxurious apartment inside his apartment. They also talk about a famous painting called Vanilla Sky. Just then, Julie spots them together, so David asks Sophia to pretend they're having a serious conversation to keep her away. Following this, David and Sophia go to a private office and have a long talk. Back in the prison-like place, David keeps talking to McCabe, sharing his feelings about Sophia. He admits he's attracted to her and wants to keep their relationship casual, but he hopes for something more in the future. McCabe, who's been married for a long time, struggles to fully understand David's experiences as a single guy. Inside the prison, a guard seems to really dislike David and watches him closely. Following this, David continues his story. He and Sophia went to her place, where they talked all night. Although they appear very close, they don't have a romantic relationship or get physically intimate. We also learn that Sophia lives a simple life as an artist who moved to New York to follow her dreams. The next morning, as David walks out of Sophia's apartment, Juliana pulls up beside him. She abruptly asks how his night with Sophia went. She then manages to make him feel guilty about neglecting her, and eventually persuades him to get into her car. Once inside the car, it becomes evident that Juliana is obsessively in love with David. She's also jealous about him getting closer to Sophia. In a fit of rage, she starts driving recklessly, speeding through busy city streets. Fearing for their safety, David attempts to stop the car by telling Juliana that he loves her. However, instead of stopping, she drives the car off a bridge in an attempt to harm both of them. Tragically, Juliana does not survive the crash. Back in the present, David shares that after the car accident, he was in a coma for a long time and had serious injuries, like a broken jaw and a shattered arm. While he was out of it, the board had already taken over his business. Tip offered to help him get control back, but warned about who could be trusted. David also mentions that after this, he started avoiding social interactions and had board meetings over video call. In the next scene, David secretly follows Sophia, embarrassed to reveal his disfigured face to her. He then meets with a group of top plastic surgeons to fix his injuries, but they can't offer a good solution. The only thing they can suggest is a facial prosthetic. David isn't happy with this suggestion, so he offers to make them all level 6 laser lotuses, but they still can't do it, so he yells at them angrily. Afterward, despite his doubts about his appearance, David decides to show himself to Sophia. He goes to her dance studio, and her reaction is a mix of feelings. She gets emotional after seeing him, and mentions about being chased away by his guards when she came to see him. David clears the confusion and gathers the courage to ask her out, and surprisingly, she agrees. Later at night, when David meets Sophia at a club, he's shocked to see his friend Brian with her. Both of them seem uncomfortable with David's prosthetic facial mask. Soon, Sophia walks away from the table, making an excuse. David then talks to Brian, wondering why he's with Sophia. In response, he says that she called him herself. This confuses David, and as a result, he gets upset with his friend. As they get into an argument, Brian expresses how he misses the old David and is disappointed with the changed version. David says he misses when Brian's name was Earl. Feeling down and struggling emotionally, David tries to numb his feelings with alcohol, mixing it with his prescribed medication. This gets him really drunk and impaired. He starts talking to Sophia about the night they first met, making her uncomfortable. Sophia and Brian then realize that something is seriously wrong with David. As they leave the bar, David continues to act strangely. He wallows in self-pity and even insults his best friend. He accuses Brian of saying something that upset Julie and caused the car accident he was in. David also seems jealous, suspecting that Sophia and Brian might be in a romantic relationship, though he doesn't say it outright. After the group goes their separate ways, David ends up passing out on the sidewalk. The next morning, Sophia finds David in bad shape on the side of the road. She accuses him of seeking sympathy, which has strangely worked on her. She then helps him to his house, and along the way, admits that she fell for the David that she first met, and it still affects her. Back to the conversation with McCabe. David tells him about how he used to feel like he deserved Sophia's trust, but now he's unsure. While in prison, he can't stop drawing pictures of Sophia. McCabe mentions that the guards heard David call out for someone named Ellie, whom he can't remember. They also talk about the doctors fixing David's face, but he's too scared to look at it. However, David reveals that he let someone take off his mask for the first time, and she told him it was perfect. Next, we see David, Sophia, and Brian having a night out at a restaurant. During the evening, David notices a man keeping an eye on him. He believes that it is the same man who was present during his face operation. However, he also thinks that he's merely hallucinating. Then, David has a terrible nightmare about his face getting scarred again. He goes back to sleep and feels someone hugging him. Thinking it's Sophia, he hugs the person back, but it turns out to be Julie. He panics and ties her up, demanding to know what she did with Sophia. The girl keeps saying that she is Sophia, but David doesn't believe her and calls the police. To his surprise, instead of arresting Julie, the police take David in for questioning. At the police station, Tip shows up and bails David out. He then brings out photos of Julie with a bruised face, but claims that David hurt Sophia. Seeing this, our guy gets confused as he doesn't remember hitting Sophia at all. To make matters worse, he keeps experiencing hallucinations, hearing bells, and seeing people who may or may not be real. He's repeatedly told to wake up, making him unsure if he's in a dream or reality, which is how I felt when I watched his appearance on Oprah. Outside the jail, Brian is waiting, and he confronts David for hurting Sophia. The latter insists that it was Julie, but Brian angrily says that she died a long time ago in the car accident. This leaves David puzzled, and he accuses accuses Brian of being a part of the 7 dwarves of the board. At this point, he doesn't know who to trust or if he's truly awake. After this, David goes for a drink alone and encounters the same man from the restaurant, Edmund. Edmund claims there's an explanation for everything he is facing and offers to help. He also claims that David has some kind of control over the world and the people in the bar. David tests this by asking everyone to be quiet, and to his surprise, they immediately stop and stare at him. That's not control. David's on peyote. Back at the prison, David talks about Edmund, and McCabe asks if he can distinguish between dreams and reality. After this, David begins to recall the meeting he had with Edmund and a contract that he signed, but he admits he's unsure about what's real. David mentions that someone died during an experiment, but the memory is fuzzy. Next, David goes to Sophia's apartment and discovers something shocking. Everything in the house, including photos on the fridge, are related to Julie. David asks her who she is, and she insists that she's Sophia. She suggests that they restart their affair and be together again. However, David is terribly confused and refuses to believe this is the woman he's been in love with. Moments later, Julie goes into the bathroom, and when she comes out, she's now Sophia. But then, in David's recurring nightmare, while he is having intercourse with Sophia, she transforms back into Julie. David is like, this is amazing, but he feels his sanity slipping and decides to smother the woman beneath him with a pillow. But when he gets the job done, he starts panicking. In the present, McCabe tells David that he believes his guilt over how he treated Julie and her accident led to his deranged behavior and hallucinations. David then admits to killing Sophia during a moment of mental instability. Hearing this, McCabe wants to help him in his trial, but needs more answers. Later at night, David watches a TV report about Benny the dog and the cryo-freeze program for life extension. He suddenly remembers something and calls McCabe back. Together, they head to a company called Life Extension with a court order and pretend to be one of their potential customers. At the facility, David encounters a receptionist he vaguely remembers from his past. She guides him through a hallway where people share their reasons for choosing cryo-freezing. It all seems odd. They then meet Rebecca Dearborn, who explains life extension and the lucid dream option. David realizes he's heard all of this before, in reality or dreams. As Rebecca speaks, David figures out that he's not truly living his life, but is trapped in his own mind. He panics and rushes downstairs, finding an empty lobby, much like the deserted streets of New York City. At this moment, David realizes that it's all a bad dream and starts crying. He then yells out for tech support until an empty elevator opens. Inside is the man he's been looking for, Edmund Ventura, who's from the Oasis Project, once called Life Extension. Edmund starts explaining things to David. He reveals that they met over 150 years ago when life extension was established. The lucid dreams didn't start for David until the night when he fell asleep on the sidewalk. The morning Sophia found him was the start of it all. Edmund explains that they erased most of David's life and memories from before to give him a more peaceful existence. After this, David wants to know what really happened, and Edmund reveals that after the club incident, Sophia never came to get him. He woke up on his own and never saw her again. David fell into loneliness and depression, which led to his body being put in a suspended state. Here, it is revealed that it was David who contacted Edmund and signed a contract with Life Extension. He then committed the unthinkable by consuming a lot of pills. Edmund also mentions that David's best friend Brian held a 3-day memorial for him, and Sophia was there. Hearing this, David becomes happy to learn that he didn't kill Sophia. Edmund then mentions that now it's up to David to decide whether to wake up and live in the real world with other people or stay in his lucid dream with Sophia forever. As they are conversing, the two arrive at the rooftop of the building. Edmund explains that David kept seeing Julie in his dream because somewhere in his subconscious mind, he believed himself to be guilty. Right then, David's thoughts bring McCabe and Brian to the rooftop, representing the two conflicting parts of his mind. They're waiting for him to make a choice. Edmund tells David it's all up to him, and that if he wants wants to wake up, he has to face his final fear, which is heights. He assures David that as soon as he jumps from the building, he will open his eyes from cryonisation. McCabe tries his best to stop David from jumping, but the latter replies that he wants to live a real life and not just a dream, with the sun shining on him and the beautiful vanilla skies above. Before he jumps, David sees Sophia one more time, knowing he's frozen and she's gone, but they hold hope to find each other again in another life, perhaps as cats. What a stupid hope. In the last scene, David turns and takes a leap from the roof, wanting to wake up from his never-ending dream. Time slows down, and his life flashes before his eyes as he faces the unknown. He hears the words, "Relax, David. Open your eyes." And boom, the movie ends. And though I'll be the first to admit it didn't make any goddamn sense, it's one of my favorites of all time, nonetheless. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.